Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the UnWokable podcast. I'm your host, UnWokable. I heard a few questions, well, really just one from the real Ron. Shout out to him, about what is woke or what is wokeism. Well, considering the name and considering this is what I've been studying for a very long time, I thought I would provide a definitive definition for wokeism or the word woke. And it's a little more broad than you would think it would be, but I think it encapsulates the entire movement. It encapsulates the goal of the entire movement. But before we do that, please like, subscribe, share the channel, hit the bell, share the video. Go, if you're watching on Facebook, go to YouTube and watch there. That'd be really appreciated. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, share. But after all of that, I want you to watch something. I want you to listen to this. Some things are changing in Hollywood, apparently. But as you know, many of you, I'm a classically trained classical musician, conductor. And this scene in this movie perfectly encapsulates both the definition of woke or wokeism and the argument against it from a individualistic, liberty-based, artistic mindset. So watch and listen to this for just a moment.
There's a humility in Bach. He's not pretending he's certain about anything. Because he knows that it's always the question that involves the listener. It's never the answer, right? Now, the big question for you is, what do you think, Max?
So you get the context here. You have a teacher, college professor, looking at working with a music student who is a conductor, and she's playing Bach. And she's asking him, what do you feel from this music? What is the music and the composer trying to tell you? It's a general answer or a general question you get, because about being a conductor or a musician is about interpretation of what the composer, in this case Bach, who is maybe the genius in all of music history. Almost all of Western classical music is based on Bach since the time that he came on the scene. And listen to what the student says. This is important.
You play really well. But nowadays, white, male, cis composers, just not my thing.
Okay, so stop. He says, nowadays, you play beautifully, but nowadays, male, cis, or cisgendered, and he would have put white in there too, are not my thing. So he's categorizing Bach. He's categorizing Bach not by the production of what is in front of him, what's being played, what he's listening to. He's categorizing Bach by his immutable qualities that are no longer even in existence. They died when Bach died. But Bach's music did not. So listen to her response to this. This is amazing.
Male, cis composers, just not my thing.
Don't be so eager to be offended. The narcissism of small differences leads to the most boring conformity.
The narcissism of small differences leads to the most boring conformity. The narcissism of small differences leads to the most boring conformity. wokeism could be boiled down to that statement, a narcissism. That it's perfect. Listen.
I guess Edgar Perez is okay. I mean, no, like, I kind of, anyway.
Oh, well, then you must be aware that Perez once famously stated that jazz was a Negro product exploited by the Jews.
Ooh.
Didn't stop Jerry Goldsmith from ripping him off for his Planet of the Apes score. It's kind of a perfect insult, don't you think? But you see, the problem with enrolling yourself as an ultrasonic epistemic dissident is that if Bach's talent can be reduced to his gender, birth country, religion, sexuality, and so on, then so can yours.
See? If Bach's entire existence can be boiled down to where he was born, his skin color, his gender, then so can yours. Listen to that one more time.
Ape score. It's kind of a perfect insult, don't you think? But you see, the problem with enrolling yourself as an ultrasonic epistemic dissident is that if Bach's talent can be reduced to his gender, birth country, religion, sexuality, and so on, then so can yours. Now, someday, Max, when you go out into the world and you guest conduct for a major or minor orchestra, you may notice that the players have more than light bulbs and music on their stands. They will also have been handed rating sheets, the purpose of which is to rate you. Now, what kind of criteria would you hope that they would use to do this? Your score reading and stick technique or something else?
See? Wokeism, and I'm going to give you the definition here in a minute, but wokeism is a replacement of all things, of all other aspects of identity, who you truly are, with a focus on your immutable qualities or your identitarian qualities or who you are on the outside where you were born at the replacement of everything else. But it goes both ways and they don't realize that. I'm going to finish the video and then I'm going to give you my definition.
Would you hope that they would use to do this? Your score reading and stick technique or something else? All right, everyone. Using Max's criteria, let's consider Max's thing. In this case, Anna Thorvaldsdottir. Now, can we agree on two pieces of observation? One, that Anna was born in Iceland, and two, that she is, in a Waldorf teacher kind of way, a super hot young woman. Show of hands. All right, now let's turn our gaze back to the piano bench up there and see if we can square how any of those things possibly relate to the person we see seated before us.
So a conductor's job is to take the music that a composer writes and interpret the music for the music's sake. And he said that he preferred this composer that she's mentioning because she wasn't a cisgendered white male. And what she did is basically turned it around on him and said, but this is a woman from Iceland and you're a man here. How does any of that relate? You can't relate to that because you're not a man under your own, or you're not a woman under your own ideology, under what you're espousing right now. And what does he do? He gets upset because she has completely dismantled the usefulness or what he sees as the usefulness of the way that he's thinking. Now there's some language here, just a warning. I'm going to try to get past it. But I want you to hear what she says at the end because he runs off. He gets very upset.
Where are you going? And you are a robot.
Okay, and then I got past it. So.
And you are a robot.
You are a robot.
I mean, unfortunately, the architect of your soul appears to be social media. You want to dance the mask, you must service the composer. You got to sublimate yourself, your ego, and yes, your identity. You must, in fact, stand in front of the public and God and obliterate yourself.
Okay. What she is defining right here is the opposite of wokeism. So we're going to use the opposite at the moment to define what wokeism is. So what she says here, just listen again. And you are a robot.
You are a robot. I mean, unfortunately, the architect of your soul appears to be social media. You want to dance the mask, you must service the composer.
You want to dance the mask, you must service the composer. You want to achieve and be able to be the conduit for something better and greater than yourself, then you have to what? You got to sublimate yourself to?
You got to sublimate yourself, your ego, and yes, your identity. You must, in fact,
You've got to sublimate yourself, your ego, and your identity, because music is far beyond what you are on the outside, what Bach was on the outside, where he was born, what was between his legs, or anything else. The music is outliving him. And the conductor's job is to grab the music, what is left of him, of a legacy that has outlived him, because it is greater than he was, because it was beyond what his skin color was, because it was beyond what his outside qualities, the imperfection that was his physical being is now is gone, but what was in his spirit is being taught to these students in this classroom 500 years later, 400 years later. That is the opposite of wokeism. But she calls him a robot because he is a musician. Obviously, he's in this class where he's a conductor. You've got to be of a certain level to be there. And he loves music enough to be there. But what has happened to this kid? He has become a robot for a political identity. He sublimated himself not to the greatness of music or to the beauty of music for music's sake. He sublimated his identity to a political philosophy that actually seeks to remove his identity and replace it with that political philosophy. That's wokeism. That's wokeism. I'm going to let her say it again because she says it so well.
you are a robot.
You
I mean,
are
unfortunately, the architect of your soul appears to be social media. You want to dance the mask, you must service the composer.
You want to dance the mask? That means you want to embody, you want to conduct, you want to lead musicians, you want to dance the mask of the composer. You want to lead other musicians who are probably better musicians than you in many cases in a journey. Then you have to sublimate yourself to the will, not of the composer's body or where they were born, but of the mind and the beauty that they created. And if you do that, you must sublimate your own identity, where you were born, what language you speak, what's important to you. That is the difference here.
You got to sublimate yourself, your ego, and yes, your identity.
Yes.
You must, in fact, stand in front of the public and God and obliterate yourself.
You must stand before the public and God and obliterate yourself. As a conductor, if I were to grab my stick, the only thing I ever want you to see of me is the back of my head. Because my job as a conductor, his job as a conductor, is not to pronounce my identity or the identity of anybody else who is making the music, compose the music. The music stands for the sake of the music. And the politics behind it comes secondary. Now, you can have that as a part of the story. but it is not the focus, especially for anybody picking the music, because politics, wokeism has deliberately tried to make everything political. It's deliberately tried to make everything you do political. So you can't enjoy music without seeing a message. So you can't watch a football game or a basketball game without seeing a political message. So you can't. It is seeking to remove the separation of church and state, or business and state. Lots of people refer to wokeism as communism or Marxism, and it has that undertone in its message, but its structure is fascistic. It is designed to unify public and private institutions. That's what ESG is about, environmental social governance. That is what DEI is about, because it instills a moral philosophy in your school, in your business, in your sports, in every organization. That's wokeism. Wokeism is a combination of fascism and Marxism and communism in its structure. And it does that by manipulating people into removing what they see or what their individual identity is, what they hold to be true, without the influence of a political messaging scheme or a public policy based compel technique. Wokeism seeks to remove your identity. Here's another example. Wokeism seeks to remove the identity of your kids by not allowing them or training them to believe that it's not good to think of people as either a boy or a girl. Because if you can remove one's gender, if you can convince someone, or gender, or sex, excuse me, if you can remove someone's basic biological sex, if you can convince them that that's not real, you can convince them of anything. You can convince them that being anti-racist, which means discriminating against people who you don't agree with, is not racism. You can convince people of anything if you can convince them they're not a boy or a girl. But what you do with that is you remove the very basic foundation of your child's or the student's identity. And that frees that empty space to be filled with a political identity. And that political identity then becomes the personhood of the child. And then when you disagree with the policy, right? Anti-racism is couched specifically in policy. Queer theory and all of that is couched in policy. If you disagree with their policy, their political positions, they interpret that emotionally as you attacking their personhood, as you attacking who they truly are. Now, this gets transplanted. That's just the micro. There's a macro version of that. That's the ESG of it all. That's the environmental aspect of it all. Because it's top down, but it couches everything in moral terms. That's wokeism. Instead of sublimating yourself before God and the composer, before the music that was written, you've sublimated yourself before a political agenda couched in a faux moral philosophy designed to remove who you truly are and replace it with that agenda. That's wokeism. So here is my definition. I'm going to show you, and I'm tweak this a little, but I worked on it's something I had in my head for a while, and I've said it over and over again. But I don't like people pejorativizing the word woke and saying that we can't use it, because first of all, the best tools that you have to beat, as people in Oklahoma like to determine it or to label it, is the radical left that are doing what they're doing to your schools, that are banning parents from school board meetings or putting books in schools. The best tool that you have is the language and the definitions and the words of the people doing it, because there was so long, ladies and gentlemen, that they didn't think that anybody would ever catch on. And so they used and created the word woke as a a virtue. We in the unwoke community have spent years turning that on them by showing what they actually mean when they say the word woke. So here's my definition. Sorry. Here's the definition. Wokeism, a 21st century leftist identitarian political philosophy that employs a deliberate system of social manipulations and public policy enforcement designed to replace the unique identity of individuals and thus organization and institutions with a collective political identity, with the goal of shifting Western society from a focus on individual liberty to a focus on despotic or tyrannical collectivism. I know that sounds wordy, but I believe it encapsulates every single part of what wokeism, not just what wokeism is, but how it functions. Because take critical race theory, for example. Critical race theory, which is a subset of wokeism, some would say a cornerstone of wokeism in our society, has a philosophy and then a praxis. It has the tenets and then it has the practice of the tenets, because it's rooted in education. So I'll read this for you again. Wokeism, a 21st century leftist identitarian political philosophy that employs a deliberate system of, I need to put it in social manipulations and public policy enforcement designed to replace the unique identity of the individuals and thus organizations and institutions with a collective political identity, with the goal of shifting Western society from a focus on individual liberty or individualism or individual identity to a focus on despotic or tyrannical collectivism. That is wokeism. And so yesterday when I brought out OU's ESG plan, here's an example. They want to use the term environmental justice as a social manipulation to inform public policy, so they can use that social manipulation to justify a policy that people normally wouldn't accept. They want you to accept $7 a gallon gas as a part of the moral good, as part of saving the environment. Normally, you wouldn't do that. But if you see it as a moral good, if you get enough people in society to buy into it as a religious belief, then they can implant it in policy. And by the time you realize it, by the time you realize that you maybe don't agree with it because it's hurting you in a very practical way in your home life, in your family, in your ability to put food on the table, you can't do anything about it by then because the policy is already there. Once instituted, it's very difficult to remove. So that's what I mean by a deliberate system of social manipulations and public policy enforcement designed to replace the unique identity of individuals and thus organizations and institutions with a collective political identity, with the goal of shifting Western society from a focus on individual liberty, meaning whether it's city, state, local governance, individual determination, to a focus on despotic or tyrannical top-down collectivism. That's wokeism. If you wanted to make it shorter than that, all you have to say is it's a mode of operation instituted throughout society designed to remove your identity and replace it with a political identity toward the goal of taking your liberty. And guess what? You don't have to be a leftist to be woke. If you are servicing as a Republican or a self-proclaimed conservative, any aspect of this agenda, I don't care if you banned abortion, I don't care what else you've done that gives you your supposed conservative credential. If you are using the environment or social justice as a manipulation to either make money and institute this agenda, you are woke. You are crypto woke. You are engaging in wokeism. That's what I call crypto woke. Somebody who walks in and says, I'm a conservative, right? I'm somebody who, obviously just is against the woke, but you're instituting policies that you think nobody will catch that are actually strengthening and funding this definition, this what wokeism actually is. Wokeism is a conglomeration or a mixture of fascism at the top, fascistic control of public and private institutions, with communistic or Marxist manipulations. And just like I said yesterday to you, the universities are the center of it. And we spent 2 years ignoring them for bright, shiny things, for nice, big, juicy stories about, whether it's the woke coming up with the blackface walking around at OU, or it's, just constantly focusing on the books in schools, which is fine. You need to do that. But magicians do something, and politicians are nothing more than magicians. They make you look at the bright, shiny, crazy thing while they actually do the work with their other hand. That is the sleight of hand. And so the boring part is the important part. And that's what's going on in your universities. That's what I've been telling you since 2020. That's what I've gotten in trouble for, so to speak. Because I call out Republicans who claim to be conservatives but are implementing the fascistic part of wokeism, which is not like they talk about Donald Trump. I'm talking about the definition, which I'm going to do something on this soon, of fascism in its base, which is a merger of state and corporate power. It's blending together the public and the private so that you have all of the public funding with none of the ability for the voters to check and balance the private aspect of it. If you haven't noticed, Facebook and Google and Twitter and all of these companies, Apple, have more rights to free speech as entities than you do. That's why they can ban you. Claim to be a public forum, but act as a public editorializing board. So that is what I believe the actionable definition of wokeism. Don't be fooled into thinking that wokeism is just gender ideology or critical race theory, or wokeism is, I believe, more in the DEI realm of things. and the SEL realm of things. There's the manipulation and the enforcement. SEL, social emotional learning, which is being practiced on all of you every day through the very device you're looking at right now to watch this video. And then the enforcement, which implants public policies into institutions, governments, cities, states, schools, universities. And if you dare to object, removes you from them. Don't be a robot. Don't allow anyone to remove your identity as an individual and make you a robot that sublimates yourself to a political agenda. That's wokeism. And for those of you who may not like using the word, you should get used to it, but make sure you know what the definition is. If you can't correctly identify the problem, then you have no hope of fixing it. None. If you can't be honest about the people you may like that are knowingly or unknowingly pushing an agenda through public policy and lying to you about it, you're never going to fix the problem. You're going to leave your children a world that you don't recognize. And you're going to do so while thinking you are doing the right thing. If I had to, I really like everybody that's doing great work here in Oklahoma, Moms for Liberty, and, the other podcasters that are doing this. But the thing that separates me from them is my job is to tell you what is happening before it happens. My job is to dig deeper into just what is you can see with your eyes and what gets on the news. My job is to tell you what you don't see so you can see it, so you can fix it before it becomes a problem, which is what I tried to do for 2 years. And we all have our places. We all have our things. We all have our parts in the fight. But I humbly ask that you listen to me on this one. That although it may feel good to be constantly raising hay about the fires, about the things that will catch the news media's attention, don't be part of the magician's trick. Focus on the school boards. Good. Focus on the administrators. Good. But if you don't do that at the university level, you will lose. And you will lose 10 years from now. You'll just wake up one day and there it's gone. All while you think you're fighting the good fight. I don't want that for us. I don't want that for you. And I know that I get painted as what was the word that a person on Twitter used for me? Abrasive. Abrasiveness in defense of children, society, America, and our values is no vice. I will be abrasive. I will call out the people you like. When I'm wrong, I'll admit I'm wrong. But if I'm not, I won't. Until someone proves me wrong. But attacking me as a person because you can't defend what I'm throwing at you policy-wise, it's not a defense. That's ad hominem attack. That is a woke manipulation tactic. So do all that you can. I want to work with everyone, But we have to understand what wokeism is, ladies and gentlemen, in order to beat it. And it's not just the porn in schools. It's not just the gender ideology. It is an amalgamation of what the goal of all of that is. And until you understand that and embed that into your mindset as a matter that affects the way you operate in defeating it, you will lose. Wokeism, a 21st century leftist identitarian political philosophy that employs a deliberate system of social manipulations and public policy enforcement designed to replace the unique identity of individuals and thus organizations and institutions or governments with a collective political identity, with the goal of shifting Western society from a focus on individual liberty to a focus on despotic collectivism. That is wokeism. But I've got a heart out, guys. Got to go do a meeting. Wikipedia snippet AD. Sorry, I need to get. I'll get you all that information. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, share the video. I'll come back on later and do a little bit more on this. Ron told me he was going to invite me on the show tonight. We'll see what happens. So be watching for that. All right, guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.